And 3, 2, and 1. Hey, Iron Pigs fans, Mike Ventola with you. And as you know, we get the opportunity to continue to talk to some Iron Pigs players from years past. One in particular here is Mike Cervenak. And Mike, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me. And secondly, hopefully you and your family are doing well throughout this quarantine process.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me, Mike. And yeah, fortunately we are. And I hope everything is well on your side as well.
No, we appreciate it. So I guess Iron Pigs fans would want to know first and foremost, what have you been up to since, your days as an Iron Pig player and even your days as a professional?
So after I ended up leaving Lehigh Valley, I bounced around a couple AAA teams. I made my way through the New York farm system, the Marlins farm system. And then I ended up playing in Taiwan in 2013 and then coming back to Toledo to finish the year. I grew up just north of Toledo. So it was a nice way to finish off my career. My parents got to come down, see me play in all the home games, which was nice. And then after I took a job in medical devices with Medtronic, and I now do spinal implants as a living.
Which is great. And, I guess for you, have you been home throughout this entire process? I guess, when they said, folks got to stay home, have you been able to venture out at all?
So we actually, in our procedures, we have a component of both tumor and trauma. So we've been having surgeries I've been out of the house probably 3 to 4 times a week doing surgeries still. So I've been pretty mobile, and it's a little bit uneasy going into hospitals, but I mean, that's part of my job that I have now.
And, too, I mean, for when, players, when they're playing when they're playing in whether major league and minor league baseball, wanting to play for as long as they want to, and then comes a point, of course, where it's like, all right, when retirement comes into play for whatever specific reason. And now with you working in the medical field, was that something that even as a player you thought about, okay, when the day comes, hopefully not for a very long time, that I may want to venture into this field, or to just happen to sporadically, pop into your lap?
So that's a really good question. I had a little bit of anxiety as far as what I was going to do when I finished. I went to college for physical therapy, and then physical therapy ended up turning into a doctorate degree that was 3.5 years postgraduate. So at that point, I was getting out of baseball, I want to say 35, 36. I had, I didn't see myself going back to school for 3.5 years. One of my ex-teammates in college had done it. I reached out to him. He said he was in medical devices. This is why he got out of physical therapy. And it kind of just evolved from there. I had an interview. I had just literally stepped off the field. And I remember, as much as I had anxiety of what I was going to do after baseball, I remember going into the interview, with nothing to lose. I think I had a secret high five with the manager when I walked out, and they thought it was great because they're like, oh, this guy's completely out of the box. From what we normally hire biomedical engineers, and this guy's a little bit of a goofball personality. So, and it ended up actually working out for me.
Which is awesome too. And I know for you, you had the opportunity to, go to the University of Michigan. I know we're going to get into a lot of Iron Pig stuff here in just a few moments, but I had to ask you because Michigan being such a world-renowned university, what was your experience like there? And, even your baseball experience there too, allowing you to play there and get that opportunity to get into the professional ranks. You got to have so much fun getting a chance even to go back and visit, I'm sure.
I did, and it was great seeing the University of Michigan kind of return to predominance in college baseball this last year, reaching the finals against Vanderbilt. And then even this year, they were ranked number 1 at one point after beating Vanderbilt in Arizona early. So, yeah, you're proud, obviously, to be part of that organization. I grew up watching – I'm from Michigan. I was a Michigan kid. I grew up watching the University of Michigan, always being a fan. So for me to have the ability to go there was a dream come true. And then I was also able to go with a lot of my teammates that I played summer ball with growing up. So it was a nice little transition from high school to college with that. We did fairly well. We won the Big Ten in 97 regular season, and then we won the tournament in 99. But I still think we were underachievers for the talent we had. We had J.J. Putz, who ended up being an MLB All-Star as a closer. We had Bobby Scales, who ended up making it to the big leagues. We had, David Parrish, who ended up he was a first-round pick, and then he made it up with the New York Yankees. So that was a pretty formidable lineup. And we had a couple other guys that got drafted that played some serious professional baseball. And to only come away with 2 Big Ten titles is, a little bit disappointing and all that, I guess.
But still getting the opportunity to, leave Michigan as a winner, which is awesome. And then, as like you jump into the professional world, as you talked a little bit about earlier, and then, when you joined the IronPigs in their inaugural season back in 2008, you signed with the Phillies, and I'm sure throughout that spring training, you're working to try to make Philadelphia, but knowing that when you had the news that you were going to AAA and going to be playing for the IronPigs, knowing they had a brand new ballpark, it's a first year for this AAA team. Did that trickle into your mind at all, or was it just a situation of, hey, this is where my assignment is, going to go work hard, and whatever happens after that?
So I ended up getting Rule 5 after my 3rd year with the Yankees to the San Francisco Giants. The 3rd baseman in San Francisco was Pedro Feliz.
Mm-hmm.
I signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, and 2 days later, Pedro Feliz, I think, signed with the Philadelphia Phillies. So that really, if you want to know my first thought, that was my first thought. Like, can this guy just not leave me alone? But yeah, I mean, when you enter into professional baseball, you realize it's a business. You deal with I call it job mortality a lot. So you have to realize that if you don't get your job done, you're probably not going to have the opportunity to play. So when I did find out that I was being reassigned to the Phillies, the IronPigs, as disappointing as it was, you kind of had to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get going. And, when we got there and we saw the ballpark was amazing. I mean, it's a big league ballpark essentially. So that was all very exciting to be part of a new team.
And you talk about the ballpark too, and I'm sure when you as players, especially in the minor leagues, you're working hard, you're working with your coaches, doing what you can to get better each and every day. But then that comes that time when you have to have some sort of relationship with members of the front office, being it media personnel, broadcasting personnel, the on-field people for the in-between inning promotion stuff. And then I'm sure it came a moment when you got a chance to meet General Manager Kurt Landis. When you think about the folks that you got a chance to meet with that work with the IronPigs full time, what was that relationship like? And and how much did they do what they needed to do to make sure you guys were kept well and were able to have the best of the best each and every day?
Well, I think they did a great job. I know one of the biggest hangups that we had when we got there was finding housing, which was completely new to everybody, right? And you basically have 3 days to find housing, and people were looking, and the rent we were getting was like $2,800 per month for an apartment, which that actually was a lot of money to pay for those months that you're staying there when you don't have utilities included. So, I mean, they met with us. I remember them coming into the locker room, meeting with us, asking us what our needs were, how they could address them, how they could help. And we were able to work with them. I think they actually put us up in a hotel for the first homestand, because typically you only get a couple days to find rent and then you have to go on. But they put us up in a hotel. They took care of us. They made sure that, we were comfortable. Everybody found housing, and, it ended up being a really good relationship, which you don't always establish. A lot of times when you go to a minor league field, it's kind of front office pulling against you because they're trying to cut corners, save money here, when it was really professionally run in Lehigh Valley.
And then a lot of the guys you got a chance to play with, and you're playing under Dave Huppert at the time, and some of your teammates, whether it be Andy Tracy or Rich Thompson, and it can keep going on and on. And when you think back to that first season, I know you guys started off slowly before you really got into that winning mode. What was when you think back to that first year, and knowing that the relationships you made with a lot of those guys, how much you've been able to keep in touch with a lot of those guys, even as time's been able to roll along?
Yeah, I mean, you end up getting on that carousel a little bit where you're kind of like, I don't want to say a AAA retread, but you kind of end up, as you go, you end up keeping in touch just basically by playing against those guys. I still will text Tracy every now and then because I see what he's doing. He's a Columbus Clippers manager, and him still being involved with baseball. It's tough keeping in touch outside because people end up having families, time gets short, so it's hard, but every once in a while you'll run across, guys.
And, too, in running across guys and, getting a chance to, your travels are, is a little different. You're riding buses. You're not as on many plane rides as you would be up in the major leagues. I know you touched earlier on Toledo. Was there another place in the International League that you enjoyed going to play at, or even going to visit?
Going to play or going to visit in the IL. I always like going to Buffalo. Buffalo, for whatever reason, and I ended up playing in Buffalo, but Buffalo was kind of like a small, big town where you stayed downtown. The ballpark was downtown. You walked to the ballpark. So I always enjoyed that style of atmosphere. And I have to say Syracuse, too, basically for dinosaur barbecue.
It's funny, too, because you mentioned dinosaur barbecue. Rich Thompson mentioned the same exact thing. I've never been to dinosaur barbecue. What is it about this place that I need to go visit?
It's really good. And Rich is a foodie. I remember him we would get into town super late, and Rich waking me up to go get breakfast. He's like, I looked up this breakfast spot. It's only a $50 cab ride away. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock, Rich. I'd like to sleep a little bit more, but he wanted to jump in he was a big foodie, so I'm not surprised. Dinosaur barbecue's good, though.
Oh, that's great to hear. And then I know, too, talking about your days as an Iron Pig and, and all the relationships that you've been able to, develop with people. But then came a great moment for you was when you and Tracy, you guys get the opportunity to get called up to Philadelphia, and you get the chance to join the Phillies for their postseason run and eventually their World Series run. And, when you think to that ride and being in the clubhouse and getting the opportunity to, be next to, a lot of the guys that, ended up doing what they had to do to win the World Series. What was that experience like for you?
I mean, that's basically the pinnacle of everything that you wanted to achieve in baseball. So being that close to it, being made that, you were part of it, that you were inclusive of it, that was a really special feeling. And I think, I'm very appreciative to the Phillies for giving me that opportunity because, when the playoffs started, they sent me, Greg Golson, Tracy, and Lou Marson down to extended camp in spring training to kind of keep working out, play games, stay in shape. And then they could have easily said, once the World Series started, like, hey, stay down there. We'll call you if we need you. But they brought us up to be part of the team, which was a class act on their part.
Now, which is really cool. And, because I'm sure for some organizations, they do things a little differently. And knowing that the Phillies were able to do that. And, when talking to, former players and coaches from the, that have worked at some time with the Phillies and even a lot of the current guys, they always talk about the importance that Philadelphia is very much community, family first, really care about you, the player. And I guess you really got a chance, as you said, to see that firsthand when they took you up and allowed you to be a part of, the entire clubhouse when they were fighting to win the World Series.
Oh, 100%. And I think the fact that they called me and Tracy up within the same year speaks to that as well, because typically we were, guys that had been in AAA for a while, established, nowhere near considered to be prospects. We were both having very good years and deserved the opportunity to go up. And still, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about baseball is there has to be a need. And even if you have a great year in AAA and there's not a need for you in the big leagues, or they're looking at somebody else for your position, it's a difficult business and you don't receive that call up. But, for the Phillies to reward us both in that sense, it speaks to what you just talked about.
So I got to ask, were you there for the World Series trophy celebration, when fans jam-packed Citizens Bank Park? Were you there for the whole parade and everything?
I was there for the whole parade. I remember my father coming into town. He had left. Him and my mother left because Game 5 was actually rain delayed 2 days. I don't know if you remember. So my dad came back into town. He got to see the parade. And I remember us getting to Citizens Bank. The parade ended in Citizens Bank, and everybody got a convertible. They announced all the coaches first. Charlie Manuel was the last coach. He had the World Series trophy. The place erupted when he comes out. And then, they, for whatever reason, sent me out first. They could have sent out Cole Hamels, World Series MVP, Ryan Howard, MVP of the season, right? They sent out Mike Cervenak. So I just remember they announced me, Mike Cervenak, infielder. And it was, I could hear crickets in the background, like 47,000 people, just dead silent. Piece of tumbleweed rolled by my convertible. And a drunk girl said something lewd, you know. And the other memory that I have, and I drove 9 hours home with my father ended up staying in the room I was at, sleeping on my couch. And I remember he woke up the next morning, pounded on my door. He's like, all right, let's go. Let's start driving home. And I'm like, it's kind of a good time to be a Philadelphia Philly in Philly. I really didn't want to go home. And my dad drove us both home that very next day. And I just remember not talking to him in the car. I was so upset by that fact. We obviously have gotten over that, but that was one of the things.
No, which is, you know, still what a cool moment for you. I remember when I was in college at that time, and I probably
made me feel old.
And I regret, and I know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make you feel old, but, you know, it's, you know, a lot of my friends were like, come on, let's go to the parade. I said, no, sorry to be, you know, a Debbie Downer here. I actually went to class that day. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to class, try to be good. I could watch the parade on TV and end up working like that. But two, you know, as you look back at everything, and I know you had a chance to really talk about some really cool moments throughout your career. I know when I talk to some players, they keep in touch with a lot of fans or people they've, you know, in their journey that they've developed relationship with, not so much their teammates, but fans, you know, outside, you know, uniformed personnel. Have you had the opportunity to keep in touch with any fans, whether it be from the IronPigs or any of your other stops?
I have. So when I was in AA Norwich, I actually, I lived with a host family, an elderly couple, since which the father/grandfather passed away. So I still actually do keep in touch with the mother, Mrs. Hinch. So I'll still call in, check on her. There's other couple fans from Norwich that I keep in touch with. In Lehigh, every once in a while, I'll talk to somebody via social media, but my relationship isn't as close as it is with Mrs. Hinch, I would say.
Well, that's cool, though. You keep in touch with her and, you know, and even going back to your days in Norwich. But, Mike, it's been awesome getting a chance to talk with you. I'm glad we got connected, and I know our fans are going to enjoy watching this and getting a chance to see what you've been up to as well. But before I let you go, if there's anything you'd like to say for IronPigs fans and, you know, and just whether it's about what's going on or just, you know, want to say hello, but I'm sure they, you know, love to see what, you know, what you have to say.
I think the big thing is the atmosphere when I played in Lehigh was incredible. That was easily the best fan base that I played in front of when I was in AAA. It was like a big league atmosphere, you know, when I played there. So, you know, I'm appreciative for all the memories that they provided me with, and I just hope everything is well with everybody there.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much, and best to you and your family, and hopefully get a chance to talk again down the line.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
All right, that's Mike Cervenak. I'm Mike Ventola. Thanks for watching, IronPigs fans.